Senate Resolution 400 by Senator Stewart-Cousins, commending former Senator Velmanette Montgomery upon the occasion of her designation as the first ever recipient of the Senate Majority Leader's Legislative Legacy Award. Whereas it is the custom of this legislative body to recognize and commend those individuals of outstanding purpose whose lives have been committed to public service and the pursuit of excellence in the conduct of the legislative process in this noble empire state. And whereas, attending to such concern and in full accord with its longstanding tradition, this legislative body is justly proud to reflect upon the extraordinary individuals who have made everlasting contributions on behalf of their fellow men and women and have left their mark on this great empire state. Senator Velmanette Montgomery is one such individual. She truly devoted her life to serving her government with integrity and commitment for the sole purpose of serving the needs of others. And whereas Senator Velmanette Montgomery was first elected to the New York State Senate in 1984, after that, she was reelected 17 consecutive times. And whereas Senator Velmanette Montgomery was the second black woman to be elected to this legislative body, first elected more than 20 years after the first black woman to be elected to this legislative body, paving the way for a new generation of diverse senators. And whereas Senator Velmanette Montgomery represented District 25, which includes Fort Greene, Boerum Hill, Red Hook, Bedford-Stuyvesant, Sunset Park, Gowanus, and Park Slope, among other neighborhoods located within the borough of Brooklyn. And whereas Senator Velmanette Montgomery was the longest-serving Democratic senator in New York State history and was the first senator to give birth to a child while serving in office. Through her work, she made New York a better place to live, to work, and to raise a family. And whereas she served as a longtime secretary of the New York State Senate Democratic Conference and served on the conference leadership team for over a decade. In 2019, she was appointed Majority Conference Secretary. And whereas, as a trailblazing legislator and state leader, Senator Velmanette Montgomery was well known for her effective leadership and steadfast commitment to her constituents. During her career, she worked tirelessly as an advocate for youth, public education, criminal justice reform, environmental preservation, and civil rights. And whereas during her distinguished tenure in this legislative body, Senator Velmanette Montgomery sponsored numerous bills that were enacted into law and have made deep and lasting changes to better the lives of the residents of New York State. Among these important accomplishments are laws prohibiting the use of shackles on pregnant women, allowing youth in foster care to remain in care past their 18th birthday, and ensuring fair and equal pay for public employees. And whereas, as the chair of the New York State Senate Standing Committee on Children and Families, Senator Velmanette Montgomery was dedicated to helping young people achieve positive outcomes through reform of the state's juvenile justice, foster care, and adoptive system. And whereas Senator Velmanette Montgomery's dedication to improving the lives of young people led her to be a statewide champion of Youth Build, an organization that provides opportunities for young people to realize their full potential. Her support helping to achieve millions of dollars in state assistance and bicameral support for the program. And whereas her passion for supporting children's health and well-being led Senator Velmanette Montgomery to lead the fight to school-based health clinics, helping to secure significant state fiscal support for health services for schools in an innovative community-based model. And whereas Senator Velmanette Montgomery was known for her championing of incarcerated persons and understood the critical need to create a pathway for second chances, her commitment to restorative justice included her often lonely but ultimately successful crusade to raise the age of criminal liability. And whereas, in acknowledgement of her longtime advocacy on the issue of kinship care, Senator Velmanette Montgomery was a recipient of numerous awards, including the auspicious Barbara M. Clark Kinship Champion Award. And whereas Senator Velmanette Montgomery was not only known for her success as a legislator, but for her passion for mentoring new legislators, staff, and others, leaving a lasting impression on the next generation of leaders and lawmakers. And whereas prior to her service in public office, Senator Velmanette Montgomery worked as a teacher, adjunct professor, and daycare director. Furthermore, she was the co-founder of the Daycare Forum of New York City and served as president of Community School Board 13. And whereas Velmanette Montgomery obtained a master's degree in education from New York University, becoming a Refson Fellow at Columbia University. In 1991, she was awarded an honorary doctorate of law from St. Joseph College in Brooklyn. And whereas, in light of her many accomplishments and historic impact on the state legislature and the Empire State itself, the Senate Majority Leader has established a new award to honor her legacy on the state and her beloved community on the occasion of her retirement. And this award shall make Senator Velmanette Montgomery the first recipient of this newly established Senate Majority Leader's Legislative Legacy Award. Now, therefore, be it resolved that this legislative body pauses its deliberations to commend former Senator Velmanette Montgomery upon the occasion of her designation as the first ever recipient of the Senate Majority Leader's Legislative Legacy Award. And be it further resolved that a copy of this resolution, suitably engrossed, be transmitted to the Honorable Velmanette Montgomery.
Majority Leader Stewart-Cousins on the resolution.
Thank you, Madam President. I rise because this is an incredible honor for me. It is an opportunity to celebrate Black history and to celebrate someone who was iconic in creating Black excellence and excellence in general in this chamber, and that is Senator Velmanette Montgomery. I think when Carter Woodson thought about Black history, he thought about all that's untold and all that we have to be grateful for in terms of the contributions of Black people in this country. He understood that unless we spoke of our history, people would find it easy to ignore, to marginalize, to rewrite, and to decide what was important about our contributions and what were not. And those of us who have had the opportunity to stand on the shoulders of unnamed giants appreciate these moments, these months, these hours, these days, where we set aside time to celebrate those who have made a difference in our lives that people might never even know of or hear about. This past year of reckoning, where we have been experiencing the twin pandemics of the COVID-19 virus, as well as we saw the pandemic of racism, I think it made people look at Black history and really understand in so many ways the struggles and how, although we have come a very long way, I am standing in this chamber as a majority leader, there is so much untold, and so many of our institutions that have been part of a systemic oppression of people because of the color of their skin. I have heard from so many people of all different nationalities, skin tones, saying, oh, I never knew this, I never knew that. And sadly, because of the situation around COVID, I think people for the first time were able to see things in a way that they hadn't seen them before. It's not that what happened with the murder of George Floyd had never happened before, but I think it was seen in a different way. That brings me to Senator Velmanette Montgomery, because Senator Montgomery was the second African-American woman to serve in this chamber. The first was Constance Baker Motley. She was elected in 1964 and only spent a year here because she was tapped to become the borough president. It was 20 years between the election of Constance Baker Motley and Velmanette Montgomery. It was a whole generation that had passed before Senator Montgomery graced the floors of this chamber, the only African-American woman here. And when she came, representing her Brooklyn community with Fort Greene, and so many people who believed in the power of government to change their lives, and believed that this powerful woman, who was a daycare director and a community activist and doing things for the community, would be that person to come and tell their story. And every day, she came and told the story. She wasn't necessarily heard. She was in the minority while she was telling the story, and she was a minority within the minority of the Democrats, within the minority of the women, and she was the only African-American woman. And then, history making again, she was the only senator that actually ever had given birth to a child while they were a senator. Even that part of her service was historic. But it's what she fought for. When she fought for school-based health clinics because she knew her constituents didn't have access. When she fought for the right for incarcerated parents whose kids were being snatched away, never to be seen or heard of again. When she fought to raise the age so that young people weren't just incarcerated without protections. When she fought to make sure that kinship care was part of extending the family, because when these kids were yanked out of homes, who would take care of them? Grandparents. Velmanette recognized the fact that kinship care was important to get that support. She was fighting to make sure the parolees people who had a chance to get heard in parole. She fought for women not to be shackled when they were giving birth if they were also incarcerated. In fact, Senator Montgomery's legislative legacy looks like this. She spent more years than any Democrat spent in this chamber, and she got a chance, finally, to see so many of the things that she'd fought for long ago because she understood the injustice in the criminal justice system. She understood the inequities in education and access. She understood how marginalized people were and how it hampered their progress, and she fought and she fought and she fought. And finally, over the past 2 years, most of the things she fought for has become part of what we are all proud of in this chamber. When I looked at all of the different awards we have, and we have awards that acknowledge people for everything, but mostly they're people outside of our chamber. And any of these things, Velmanette, you would be qualified for. But I thought it's time that this chamber recognize people like you, whose legacy has made not only the chamber better, but each and every one of us better. Before I ever knew there was a chance that I would be a senator, I came here on a weekend, a caucus weekend, and I saw you, the very first black woman senator I ever saw. I, Roxanne, the Ada Smiths, and the Ruth Hassel Thompsons, and the Summer Brooks, we thank you. So, because we're thanking you, you do get a chance to become the very first person to receive the Senate Majority Leader Legislative Legacy Award. It is customized for you. You all can clap. There's nothing. Do not be afraid. And we're so used to being alone in here, we don't even know how to make noise anymore. But this award is custom designed for you. It will be custom designed in the future for the next person, but I know because of your proud heritage and it's Black History Month, this Kente cloth design represents you, and I'll just read what your award says. It says it's in recognition of a lifetime of legislative accomplishments that have made meaningful and deep changes to the lives of women and children of the state of New York. Pioneering efforts to raise the age of criminal responsibility for children, providing leadership and consequential mentorship to generations of women, building the foundation for funding Youth Build that supports and mentors young people, championing school-based health clinics across the state, and for your unwavering commitment to protecting the dignity of the incarcerated and their families, notably banning the use of shackles on women while giving birth, supporting the Close to Home program. Thank you for being a persistent beacon for truth and justice. Congratulations.
Senator Prasad on the resolution.
Thank you. Senator Montgomery, I am not going to repeat everything our leader said. There's no need. She has said it. All I want to remind you is of what you've done for us. Everywhere I go, there's still the question, how Senator Montgomery? No one sees you as the former senator. It's still Senator Montgomery. You have paved the way for us. And I remember what you said when you were leaving. You said to me, make sure that you work with the leader, because there's not many of us around. And my promise to you was, yes, we will continue to do so. And then it says, behind every successful woman is a tribe of other successful women who have her back. Senator Stewart-Cousins, on behalf of Senator Montgomery, we continue to pledge to you that we have your back. And as Senator Montgomery will say, bless your heart. Thank you, Madam President.
Senator Liu on the resolution.
Thank you, Madam President, for this wonderful opportunity to talk about this important resolution that our leader, Madam Senator Andrea Stewart-Cousins, has put forth in this important month of Black History Month and on the cusp of Women's History Month. We have this incredible individual by the name of Velmanette Montgomery, our former senator. I've often referred to her as my leader, far beyond the walls of this Senate, a history maker, somebody who has inspired generations of office holders, community activists in so many different ways. Senator Montgomery, I don't have enough time on this floor to talk about all the things that you have done for the state of New York, for our community, for myself personally, and indeed in your global impact. There is much to be said, but I will say that it's been memorialized in this resolution that we have proudly passed today. And I want to thank you not only for your incredible service, the legislation that you've proposed, you've put forth, you've pushed for the passage of, as our leader has already summarized, very briefly, because there's so much more, but the tone in which you have upheld your responsibilities. Senator Montgomery was never one to be loud or brash. She's always soft-spoken. But any time Senator Montgomery spoke, the entire chamber or the entire room, however large, however small, would quiet down so that we could hear what this venerable person had to say, so that we could all learn from it and understand what our responsibilities going forward would be. I also want to thank Senator Montgomery. She has amazing filing skills because she's been sending all of us mementos, photographs, newspaper articles from the last like 25, 30 years. It's amazing what she has done. Thank you for passing that on to us as well. I'm starting to get a loss for words, except to say that, we had there were so many events that were going to be held in 2020 to celebrate Senator Montgomery's due, because she paid her dues, and she fully deserved her right to retire and to step back and allow others to pick up her mantle. And in fact, I had a chance to attend a couple of those events, and then the world, or at least in-person events, got cut short. And so after February, we couldn't have any more events. And so many of the events that this outstanding individual were going to be honored at were canceled. But I know that once life gets back to normal, we are going to have those events. And I'm very happy, and I feel blessed that we're able to celebrate the life, career, and legacy of Velmanette Montgomery. Velmanette, you're not going anywhere because we all still have your number. And in some ways, you may be busier than you were before you retired because everybody thinks you have a whole lot of free time now. But thank you for visiting us once again. Thank you for your decades of service to New York, and thank you for your friendship. Thank you, Madam President, for this opportunity.
Thank you, Senator Liu. Senator Brisbort on the resolution.
Thank you, Madam President. I rise before you with two impossible tasks. One impossible task of following the incredible speech and accolades of our great leader, and the second impossible task of following in the footsteps of Senator Montgomery, my predecessor. Senator Montgomery served in this legislature for longer than I've been alive. And when she entered the legislature in 1984, some would say that Albany was an old boys club. I would add that it was an old white boys club. And for a woman, in her skin, it was an incredibly hostile environment to navigate. But she did not just navigate it, she thrived in it. We all heard a long list of her accomplishments and achievements, and I'd like to highlight that Senator Montgomery took the principled, progressive position for decades before it was popular to do so. And as we lean into her legacy, I would say the best way to honor the work that she's done in this chamber is to find those moments where we also can lean into the moments where we also find the principled position, even when it's not the prevalent one. Happy Black History Month.
Senator Gianaris on the resolution.
Thank you, Madam President, and I could not let this opportunity pass without paying my respects to one of the most beloved and respected legislators I've ever served with. And I have worked in this building for more years than I care to admit, in both houses, in various capacities. So when I say that, there are hundreds and hundreds of legislators who I could rank in terms of level of respect of their colleagues, and Velmanette is at the top of that list. It is so wonderful to see you in person, Senator Montgomery. I only regret that we're under pandemic rules, so you don't have a full chamber of love coming at you today, but you are getting a sense from the stream of members you're going to see walking in one at a time of just how beloved you were in this state Senate. And many have spoken already about your legacy and your accomplishments, and they were forward-looking, prescient in many ways. Some of the issues you were focusing on many years ago were ones that have been achieved now, and we wonder why it took so long to get there. And so we appreciate your leadership over the years on that. But I also want to speak to something a little more, I wouldn't say political, but less about legislation and more about the direction of this House and this chamber. And that is, I can go back to when the great Andrea Stewart-Cousins was selected as the leader of our conference. It was an interesting moment when senators in the conference at the time needed to be heard and people were looking for direction. And Senator Montgomery was among the first, loudest, clearest, and strongest supporters of making Andrea Stewart-Cousins the first female leader of a conference in the history of New York State. And now we see another part of your legacy, Senator Montgomery, is the incredible record that our great leader has established here in the State Senate. And so we miss you greatly. It's wonderful to see you here. I miss conferences, looking over once you would raise your hand in the corner and everyone would go quiet and listen to what you had to say. But it is wonderful to see you, and we want to have you back again with a full chamber when we could properly show you our love as we are individually today. So great to see you, Senator Montgomery. Thank you, Madam President.
Senator Mayer on the resolution.
Thank you, Madam President. It truly is an honor to be able to speak to my friend and former seatmate, Senator Montgomery. I don't know that she remembers, but approximately 35 years ago, when I first came to Albany to work for then Attorney General Abrams, there weren't very many legislators who cared about child care. There weren't very many legislators who cared individually about people whose voices weren't heard. And I remember distinctly coming before you in a legislative hearing, you and a few women who were legislators at the time, Assembly and senators, who were willing to talk about the children of our working mothers and fathers. And over the years, your dignified persistence in talking about those children, talking about those families, talking about the kind of empathy and decency that we expect of people, but is not always seen here, was a defining skill and moment that you had. And I think that's one of the reasons you were so respected. You were a reminder to all of us that we are here to speak for that child, that family who has a relative in prison, that family whose child can't get a job. We have a responsibility to treat them with respect and to be their voice. You reminded everyone on both sides of the aisle that that's what we were here for. You were a shining example of the best of legislating. I think you were held in the highest regard by everyone. And for me, you've just been a tremendous role model and a shining example of what you should and can be. Thank you.
Senator Kennedy on the resolution.
Thank you, Madam President. I rise today to join in the chorus, to sing the praises and to thank this extraordinary woman, our former colleague, Senator Velmanette Montgomery. I want to also thank our wonderful Majority Leader, Andrea Stewart-Cousins, for bringing this resolution to the floor. As we celebrate Black history, it's certainly fitting that we celebrate our former colleague, and to be named the Senate Majority Leader's first recipient of the Legislative Legacy Award. It's a wonderful accomplishment on top of so many other accomplishments that you've had in this chamber and throughout this great state. Throughout her career as a public servant, right here in New York, Senator Montgomery stood as a steadfast voice for those in need for 3.5 decades. And, you know, I heard Senator Brisport mention her successor. But Senator Velmanette Montgomery served in this body longer than many of the legislators today were even alive. Before many of them were even born, Senator Montgomery was serving in this wonderful chamber. At her core, she was drawn to correcting the injustices that exist in our society and dedicated many of her years to helping those in need, with a particular focus on civil rights, criminal justice reform, and fighting for the betterment of our youth. We know that she was the driving force regarding so many different issues. Most recently, in recent years, the transformative issue of raising the age legislation. Senator Montgomery also, we know, fought as a leading voice for women's rights and human rights in general. In essence, Senator Montgomery was the conscience of our Democratic conference. And we thank you for that, for being that voice for our conference, but most importantly, for being that voice for our state, for our people, for the betterment of society in general. As the chair of the Senate Committee on Children and Families, Senator Montgomery took a hard look at how we can improve our foster care and adoptive care systems. Her heart undoubtedly focused on helping kids. Perhaps that stemmed from her work as a teacher. We know that her work here in the state Senate was reflective of the needs of the community. She also worked as a daycare director. Her focus on youth and in the improvement of our children will forever resound throughout this state. All we have to do is take a look at where we are today as a legislative body to see Senator Montgomery's vision realized in so many ways and how it has touched so many lives across this great state and on so many levels. But she would be the first to tell each and every one of us that our work is not done. But it is her legacy and her vision for human rights and making sure that everyone has a seat at the table and also ensuring that we are thinking about everyone, from the oldest Americans to the youngest children in society. Now, in New York, it's those folks that need us more than ever before. And while Senator Montgomery is no longer a part of this legislative body, Her spirit and commitment to the people of New York is going to echo in these chambers for decades to come. So to our dear friend, Velmanette Montgomery, we extend our deepest gratitude and our best wishes and our incredible support as you enter the next chapter in your life. Thank you for all that you've done for all of us in this great state. Madam President, I vote aye.
Senator Lanza on the resolution.
Madam President, thank you. I'm violating one of my own rules about not speaking on resolutions, but every so often the resolution moves me in a way that I think requires that I say something. Also, I didn't want this to be a Democratic Party only, Senator Gianaris, because Senator Montgomery deserves nothing short of unanimous and bipartisan friendship, support, and love. You know, when I came to this chamber, Madam President, more than a decade ago, Senator Montgomery was already a leader. That was known by all, even a freshman senator like myself walking into this room. You know, people know us as members of this body, as senators. I'm going to shock some people around the state, but we're people too. And I can think about all that Senator Montgomery has meant to this body and to this state as a leader. But really what comes to mind first is how wonderful and great a person she is. I will always recollect the many conversations she and I would have, not inside this chamber, but outside this chamber, in the cloakroom, in the lounge, in the halls, when we would talk about each other's families, when we would talk about each other's neighborhoods, our districts, about the things that mattered to us beyond politics. And I always sought her out outside this chamber because I enjoyed her friendship, first and foremost, but I enjoyed being with her and enjoyed talking to her. You know, she and I a Republican, she a Democrat, we were never afraid to agree with each other in a world that doesn't want us to agree with each other, even more so today than perhaps ever before, sadly, Senator Montgomery. Nor were we ever afraid to disagree with each other. And perhaps I could speak for myself, I learned more when Senator Montgomery disagreed with me than when we agreed with each other. Senator Montgomery, this country, the body politic, needs people like you more than ever. It needs that approach today more than ever. And I hope that is, of all the things that come together as your legacy, I hope that that is the message that stands apart from all others. We've got to agree. We've got to disagree. We've got to do it with respect. You always did that. One of the issues that I worked very long and hard, and something I'm very proud today to have been a part of accomplishing, is the issue of raise the age. Now, when Senator Montgomery was talking about that issue, it wasn't very popular among Democrats. It was even less popular among Republicans. And in our conversations outside of this chamber about life and about the right approach to life and about why we all come together in this room and what it is that we're all after, which is to make things better, we began a conversation about raise the age. And those were the first conversations that I was involved in on the issue. And I knew very early on, talking to Senator Montgomery, that it was something that I wanted to be part of. And we eventually got there. And I was proud to sponsor that bill, but I could not have ever have ended up where we ended up. This state could never have ended up where we ended up without Senator Montgomery. You know, she had this idea, which seems obvious, but the obvious isn't always popular, that among all the people, all of our brothers and sisters, our children, more than anyone else, deserve a second chance. Our children, more than anyone else, deserve special consideration and acknowledgement that they are children. And so, Senator Montgomery, one of the things that when people ask me what it is that I'm proud about in terms of what I've done here as a member of this august body, is my work on Raise the Age. And I have you to thank for that, ultimately. So, I thank you for your friendship. I thank you for what you have meant to this body and to this state. I thank you for our agreements. I thank you for our disagreements. But more than anything else, I thank you for your style and your class and your integrity. And I wish there were more people like you. Congratulations, Senator Montgomery.
Senator Savino on the resolution.
Thank you, Madam President. I'm not sure I can follow that, Senator Lanza. That was actually quite touching. Senator Montgomery, I don't even know where to start. I think of all of the tragedies of the pandemic last year, and there were so many families affected in so many ways, so much heartbreak. But for us here personally in the Senate chamber, I think one of the most heartbreaking thing is we didn't really get the opportunity to say goodbye to some of our colleagues who left us last year in the way that we wanted to, recognizing their contribution not just to the Senate, but to the state and to our own individual lives. Senator Lanza said, and I'm sure some of the colleagues that were here before me talked about our personal relationships with you. And I want to talk about mine. You know, when I came into the Senate 17 years ago, you know, I knew that I had a lot in common with a bunch of members, but you and I had a special relationship because we were committed to some of the very same issues, children and families. I coming out of a career in the Child Welfare Administration, then into the labor movement, you and your lifetime commitment to improving the conditions for the most vulnerable of our population, children who were languishing in foster care, children who needed preventive services, families who were affected by addiction and criminal justice, mothers who had their families separated because of all of the social challenges. That's who you dedicated your career to, you know? A lot of us get a lot of coverage from the media because of the issues that we take on. But the things that you and I cared about, the press never really paid much attention to. And I can remember many meetings of the Children and Families Committee where you and I would be the only two who would show up. But we did the work. We focused on the things that you had dedicated your career to, fighting every year to make sure that school-based clinics were in the budget, making sure that children had access to health care, those who needed it the most, fighting to make sure that women who desperately needed preventive services so they didn't lose their children to the foster care system were able to depend on that. Nurse-family partnerships, all of those things that held families together. I can remember standing next to you in the majority conference room the day you were able to get the bill passed that said it was inhumane to shackle a pregnant woman when she was giving birth in the correctional system. Who would have imagined that that actually happened? But you knew it. The rest of the world wasn't even aware that women were treated that way. You made that change, profound change for women, and then made sure they stopped doing it in jails around the state. You wanted to make a difference in small, meaningful ways that were huge. I remember, as Senator Lanza said, on Raise the Age, you and I holding the first hearing in 2011, and very few people showed up. Most of our colleagues weren't interested,
In fact, they didn't even know that the age of criminal responsibility in New York State was so low. But you sat there all day and you took testimony from individuals and from policymakers who wanted us to start down the road to change that outdated, archaic law. And 6 years later, it was done. And a lot of people took credit for it. But you and I both know how it started. It was Velmanette Montgomery, who never lost sight of what was really important. It was the most vulnerable people in this state, children and families, and those who didn't have high-priced lawyers to fight for them, who didn't have advocates really who could deliver for them, the people who just needed someone who was going to come to Albany every day. I used to tease her all the time and say, Velmanette really believes that for want of an after-school program, all the prisons would be empty. She really believed that because she understood the value of early intervention in a meaningful way, that if we could work to help kids at an early age, that's why we worked on creating the Close to Home program, to divert kids out of the criminal justice system at an early age. And we're seeing the fruits of that now. Less and less young people are winding up in prison. She dedicated her life to improving the lives of people. The proof is in the pudding. We all know it. That's why we're here today. You deserve so much more credit. And I only hope that those of us who follow you live up to your reputation, and we never forget what you have asked us to do. Protect the small, protect the vulnerable, and never, ever forget why we were sent here, to fight for those who can't fight for themselves. I am proud to have served with you, Velmanette. I am proud to have known you, and I am proud to have partaken in a small way in some of the work that you have done, because we together made a real difference for a lot of people. So congratulations on your retirement, and I hope that you finally are able to enjoy it and enjoy your family. Thank you, Madam President.
Senator Parker on the resolution.
Thank you, Madam President. I rise to add my voice to those who are doing two things today. First, giving some honor and tribute to Black History Month, and certainly adding my voice to those who are honoring and lauding the work of Senator Velmanette Montgomery. And maybe to the casual observer, they seem like different things, but they're very much within the same realm of activity that we're doing here on the floor today. That we see that the creation of African American History Month out of Negro History Week, right, was really critical in the development of even where we find ourselves now. As we talk about Black Lives Matter, we talk about the emergence of organizations like the NAACP and the Urban League. If you look at all of the momentum that we saw develop out of the murder of George Floyd, you don't get any of that without African Americans having a good sense of themselves, right? And Carter G. Woodson, in creating this holiday, understood it to be a movement that was internal. When you read his works, particularly the Miseducation of the Negro, he is not talking about schools. He's not talking about we got to get Black studies programs in the schools and we got to talk about curriculums of inclusions. And he was saying that we as people of African descent have to know our history. And he had no expectation that the large dominant white society would in fact do that for us. And so he was really clear that it was something that we had to do both on a macro level in the context of understanding the heroes and sheroes of our community and of our diaspora, but then also understanding our own personal histories and where we actually come from as people of African descent. Much of Black history has been dominated by men, right? Especially here in America in the context, of a patriarchal society. But you have to understand that women have always been side by side with men in what they call a matriarchal society, right? Matriarchal, ma'at, referring to an ancient Egyptian deity called Ma'at. She was balanced. She's where you get the 42 declarations of virtue. but she is righteousness, rightfulness, truth, order, balance, right? She was symbolized zoomorphically, Senator, as an ostrich feather. Why an ostrich feather? Because what the Kemetic people knew, who you call the ancient Egyptians, what the Kemetic people knew was that on the body of an ostrich, it had exactly the same number of feathers on both sides of the ostrich. Balance, order, rightfulness, reciprocity. Each one of those feathers was the same height, same length, same width. Balance, order, righteousness, rightfulness. They say that the Kemetic people believe that when God created the universe and spoke his sacred name into nothingness, and he steps into the universe that is void at that point, what exists is the square of Ma'at. That for ancient Egyptians, that the entire universe is predicated on this notion, on this feminine notion of balance and order and righteousness. And you see a history of African women who then rule under that same idea of order, of balance, of righteousness, of rightfulness, right? Of bringing good into the world and let no good be lost. And so we begin with Nefertiti and Cleopatra, right? With Hatshepsut, right? With the Candace Queens and Nzinga, right? With Yaasarawa. And understanding that history is absolutely connected to the history that you see here in America with people like Harriet Tubman and Sojourner Truth and Farrah Lou Hamer and Ella Baker, Betty Shabazz, Coretta Scott King, Shirley Chisholm, Constance Baker Motley, and Velmanette Montgomery. That there's a straight line in terms of the understanding of bringing truth and balance and order to this place. And you've heard my colleagues talk about her accolades. Rockefeller drug law, raise the age, juvenile justice reform. I mean, the work on just providing access for black women in the political arena. And some of that was not even just things that she legislated. Some of it was just her being. There's somebody that you knew, and I got elected here in 2002 and took office in 2003. Senator Velmanette Montgomery was already a legend. It was already somebody that I had known about and had followed their work, also being from Brooklyn, because she was directly connected to all of the important decisions that were being made in my life before that. And having an opportunity not just to serve with her in this body, but for a number of years to literally sitting next to her at the foot of the Queen has been the most important experience of my life here. That I can't even begin to, and you've heard a lot of people talk about their personal experiences, I cannot begin to tell you how much I've learned by just watching her manner. And you wouldn't know that, Mike, by the way I behave. I'm not saying that. But what I'm saying is not because I didn't learn it. Didn't say I wasn't hard-headed. I just said I was taught it. But the notion, as we reflect on the legacy of people like John Lewis and we talk about good trouble, you know, the person who brought good trouble here in the state of New York has always been Velmanette Montgomery. Somebody who's always stood up and made sure that we understood what the right thing needed to be done and made sure that the least of those in our communities were always being thought of. That at times that we weren't considering people who might be in prison and people who might have been in foster care and women who were, might have been sex trafficked and young children who might be home alone. In the moment that we were not paying attention to that, Velmanette Montgomery's eyes was on the sparrow. And she made sure that she paid attention to the least of those in our community and admonished us for not doing the same and always directed us gently right onto path. And so I'm here just to say congratulations for running a good race, for a job well done. Thanking you for not just what you've poured into me, but what you've poured into this chamber on both sides of the aisle, man and woman, black, Latino, Asian, Jewish, Christian. All of us have benefited from being in your presence and from the things that you've taught us. Thank you so much. And just wishing you nothing but joy and happiness on your travels going forward. And we hope that you will not forget about us and that you will continue to pour into us as you go on to do even more great things now that your time has been freed up. God bless you, Velmanette Montgomery.
Senator Jackson on the resolution.
Thank you, Madam President. So I rise this afternoon in order to support the resolution put forward by our Majority Leader, Andrea Stewart-Cousins, and Velmanette Montgomery, my sister. Let me thank you for your service. And I didn't know how long you served until I heard it today. 35 years in the New York State Senate. And when I only came here in January of 2019, which was just 2 years ago, as Kevin Parker, my colleague, said, you were here when he came in 2003, and you were probably here when probably 98% of the people were not here. And then I thought about the fact that you served so long in this body, basically in the minority, and both the minority and the majority, we know what it takes in order to move items, especially when you're in a minority. It's pretty tough. But you were here in 2019 when Andrea Stewart-Cousins became the majority leader. And so now you've reached the top of the hill, and now you said, I've done my job. It's time for me to move on. But I say to you, I am just fortunate enough to be able to serve with you for a term of office. And so I thank you for your service. And I'd just like to read a little bit. And at this opportunity and moment, celebrating Black History Month with Women's History Month right around the corner, Leader Andrea Stewart-Cousins introduced this resolution honoring you as the first ever recipient of the Senate Majority Leader Legislative Legacy Award. And let me tell you, that's the best thing that I say, that you're the first, nevertheless. And I was an honor to serve with you in the State Senate. And you are a powerhouse in the legislature. And I value the time I was able to legislate alongside you during your 35 years of service to the people, not only of your district, but the entire state of New York and beyond. And you were the champion of many issues, and many of them, your involvement were with youth and very positive causes in order to help people uplift themselves. And I asked my legislative director to please, what are some of the bills that we have that you were carrying? Expanding the Empire State Child Credit for children under the age of 5. Civic education for students in grades 5 through 12. TAP, Tuition Assistance Program awards for incarcerated persons. And reorganizing male control in New York City. And that's just 5, but you probably introduced hundreds of them in your tenure. And they're all for the good of the people of our state and your district in the city of New York. So Velmanette, thank you for your service. The most important thing, stay healthy, enjoy yourself, enjoy your family. And in Arabic, I say, Assalamu alaikum, peace be upon you and your family. God bless you. Madam President.
Resolution 317 was previously adopted on February 2nd. The question is on Resolution 400. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Nay? The resolution is adopted. Senator Montgomery, on behalf of the Senate, congratulations on receiving the first ever Senate Majority Leader's Legislative Legacy Award. Senators, let us rise and recognize Senator Montgomery.